The year of 1538 once again saw Barbarossa prowl the Aegean, demanding tribute, press-ganging oarsmen, and abducting villagers from settlements all across the Aegean. But while on his way south to pillage Crete, he received news that the furious Venetians, having so recently turned their own backs on Europe, had now managed to secure their own coalition of navies and were now on their way to confront him. The Venetian fleet of 81 ships, both galley and sail, were joined by a papal squadron of 36 galleys, as well as 30 more ships from Spain and another 10 from the Knights Hospitaller. Admiral Doria, the overall fleet commander, with 49 galleys, was delayed in Genoa, waiting for the arrival of another 50 Spanish fighting galleons, fresh out of the Atlantic. These were dreadnoughts of the day, who were to bring more firepower to bear on the enemy than had ever been seen thus far on the high seas. While they waited for Doria on Corfu, the papal squadron made a foray southwards, hoping to secure the entrance to the Ambracian Gulf, an enormous sheltered harbour whose entrance was a narrow bottleneck, passable only by a ship or two at a time. On the north head stood the fortress of Preveza, while on the south, just inside the channel, lay the small town of Actium, the scene of Octavian's fateful naval victory over Mark Antony and Cleopatra in 31 BC. Securing the channel would provide a commanding position over passing ships, while affording shelter in case of bad weather. But the papal assault failed to dislodge the defending Turks, and the squadron returned to Corfu to await the rest of the fleet. No sooner had they gone, but Barbarossa showed up with his own fleet of 122 galleys, having just conquered Kefalonia from the Venetians on his way north. It was shaping up to be a replay of a battle that happened 1,500 years earlier, as Barbarossa now poured his ships into the safety of the Gulf, where they formed a defensive line facing the channel. By the 25th of September, the coalition fleet, numbering over 300 galleys, barks and galleons, finally arrived on the scene and anchored just outside the channel, with both commanders now considering their options. Barbarossa, being in friendly waters, had the advantage of plentiful supply, sheltered anchorage, and an unassailable defensive position. Doria could see he was at a disadvantage, and now decided to head south, hoping to lure the enemy out onto the high seas, where his numerical superiority and firepower would prevail, and where, in the event of foul weather, they could shelter in the waters behind the islands of Lefkas and Kefalonia. From there, they could easily head into the Gulf of Patras, cut off vital shipping passing through the narrow Straits of Lepanto, which was something he knew Barbarossa could not allow. So after just 2 days of skirmish and standoff, Doria's fleet was given the command to weigh anchor. By morning, his enormous fleet had been strung out for 30 kilometres along the coast of Lefkas. Lacking any proper formation, with galleons and other sailing ships falling way behind the galleys as the breeze gave way to a dead calm. Doria laid anchor about halfway along the convoy to observe progress. Last of all was the Venetian flagship, the galleon Candia, enormous, armour-plated, and bristling with guns. Her commander, Alessandro Condalmiero, could do little but watch as they fell further and further behind the rest of the fleet, when suddenly he saw Barbarossa's fleet appear on his stern, in a wide arc and closing fast. The lumbering giant, now isolated, with not a breath of wind to carry her onward, sent word to Doria and ordered battle stations. Dwarfing his own galleys, Barbarossa now ordered his ships to circle the great galleon and attack in waves, with a lucky first shot bringing down the Venetian's main mast. But as the galleys came closer, Condalmiero gave orders to conserve ammunition and fire across an incoming formation rather than directly at them. His tactic paid off, and the Candia's first salvo caused cannonballs to skim across the water, blasting into one vessel, then tearing into the one beside it. Within the first half an hour, dozens of Ottoman galleys were damaged, but still they kept coming, with the Venetian gunners aboard their floating fortress crippling them with precision and range, and a calibre that just could not be matched by the smaller chaser guns of the enemy galleys. Meanwhile, Doria, astonishingly, seemed to be wasting time, tacking up and down the coast, while the knights and his other commanders pleaded with him to push north with all haste. Hours went by, but now, inexplicably, Doria sailed wide of the battle, refusing to engage, while dozens of coalition stragglers fell victim to Ottoman detachments sent out to swarm them. Accounts vary, but by early evening, Barbarossa's squadrons had captured numerous barques and at least 2 galleys, without having ever engaged the heavily armed Spanish galleons under Doria's command. As night fell, Doria now withdrew his Genoese and Spanish squadrons from the theatre altogether, while Barbarossa, satisfied with the outcome, made his way back toward the safety of Preveza. Despite Barbarossa's obvious and stunning victory, it has to be said that the clear hero of the day was actually Condalmiero. His cool thinking and strategic use of firepower, his armed galleon and its devastating broadside gunnery had proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that the days of the oared galley were numbered. Had Doria engaged the rest of his fleet, there could be no doubt that the Spanish galleons would have devastated the enemy formation. Doria's incomprehensible behaviour during the engagement now came under heavy criticism. Some accused him of outright cowardice, others of incompetence in managing such a large fleet of combined sail and oars. The English have shot admirals for far lesser failures. Some critics argued that he was afraid to risk the king's galleons, not to mention his own investments, while the Venetians, rightly incensed, accused him of political skullduggery, purposely exposing their flagship to destruction in an act of betrayal reflecting historical Genoese and Venetian hostility. Given Venice's recent refusal to assist in the coalition against Tunis, Doria's betrayal is perhaps not so surprising. In any event, the Battle of Preveza is viewed by historians as a significant Ottoman victory, though both fleets remained largely intact after the engagement. It highlighted the ongoing challenges of multinational alliances and conflicts of interest that frequently plagued them. But for Barbarossa, the victory spread his fame far and wide. Having engaged a massive enemy that far outgunned him, he outsmarted them and returned with spoils of war, while the enemy went home empty-handed.